during the last 15 years, what I'm learned from Japan and try to adapt to fit in school culture in Thailand. I was a school teacher when I started my career 30 years ago. I used to teach mathematics in school in Bangkok for 7 years. Then I moved to the Faculty of Education in Khon Kaen, in the northeast parts of Thailand. Then I had a chance to study in Japan for 10 years. I was a teacher trainee for 1 year and a half. Then I back to my country. Then 3 years later, I took my PhD in Japan at the University of Tsukuba for 8 years. So totally, I spent 10 years in Japan and still back and forth for another 10 years. So totally, I'm still working with a Japanese colleague for 20 years. And during the last 20 years, I try to looking back into the history of what Japan has done for many years and try to introduce into Thailand. That's what I'm sharing to you today. When I was in Nagoya in 1988, then I had a chance to visit this place. In Japanese, they say Kinkakuji Hotel. It's a temple in Kyoto. It's very beautiful. And I just noticed that, not just only my observation, but among this is the most favorite one among the tourists around the world in Kyoto. And it's one among the 21 World Heritage. In Japan, they have a lot of World Heritage. And this is one among 21 in Japan. And in order to become the World Heritage, there's a criteria. According to the second criteria, it put it like this: to exhibit an important interchange of human values over a span of times and within cultural area of the world, on development in architectures or technology or monument art, town planning or landscape design. I'm very impressed with landscape design. And maybe you have heard about this book, The Teaching Gap. It's written by Stigler and Hebert after he studied a lot of classroom in Japan. And after the release of this book, I think I could add a Japanese style of education as another word of her World Heritage on the list. Yeah. And the thing is, Japan style of education can provide a new landscape for education in my country. So what I learned from this legacy, I think teaching approach developed through lesson study is a cultural activity. So we have to be concerned that this is a cultural activity. No, we just not transform the idea from Japan into Thailand. That will concern me very much. So how to set a new landscape in education in Thailand? So where we are before we start. You see, before 2000, before entering the 21st century, there were 3 major education reforms in Thailand during 1960, 75, and a big one in 1995 when we launched a new Education Act in Thailand. But you see, we still have a lot of 17 coup d'etat. It's more than major education reform. And we have 21 ministers during 21 years. I myself have been a chance to work with only 6 ministers. So I'm so interested what the minister do. to my experience, what most ministers try to do is to change intended curriculum, but not trying to support teachers to change the way they teach. So even we entering the 20th century for many years, but nothing changed. So teaching, only in my specialized field in mathematics, teaching mathematics in Thailand has not been changed for more than 40 years. This is also true for the case of USA. I quote this from Stickler and Hibbert from the teaching gap. So how to change this landscape in education for Thailand? What we are so familiar with the term curriculum and instruction. As I just mentioned, most of ministers usually focus on the curriculum, especially the intended curriculum, but less on instruction. But when we say, we use this term together, right? Curriculum and instruction. And all universities have the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. But most of ministers focus on curriculum. But what we need is instruction, not just what to teach, but what we need is how to teach it. That's just my concern. And another idea, usually the minister tries to use the top-down approach. We are all familiar with the intended curriculum, implemented curriculum, and attained curriculum. But the approach is always top-down, from intended. But in our case in Thailand, stop somewhere, not go down to the attained curriculum. That was my experience. So to me, we need both. We need top-down and bottom-up approach. So in other words, the complementary models, both top-down and bottom-up, in order to create the research and development cycles, the R&D cycles, not just implement it, the intended curriculum, stop and then start it again and again. But we need a long-term R&D cycles. So I put this idea. In order to focus on intended or implemented or attained results, but what we need is to bridge the gap between the level. We need to bridge the gap between intended curriculum and implemented curriculum, and also we need to bridge this gap. And also, we need to inform the policy maker from the bottom up. We need a feedback. And back to this, you see this, if we bridge this gap, then it's create a big cycle, the R&D cycle. It look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the case of Japan, I have heard from my friend working at the Ministry of Education, in order to complete the 1, 2, 3, 4 big cycles, the R&D cycle, it takes 10 years. No change, no interruption from the politician. So it takes 10 years. And I have heard that in the case of Singapore and Korea, it takes like 7 years in these cycles. But we don't have such a cycle in Thailand. It just, the new minister, I work with them for many ministers. Oh, Dr. Maitree, can you help me to do the curriculum reform? I do, yes, I will do. And then 1 or 2 years, the new minister comes. Oh, Dr. Maitree, we changed the curriculum. Oh, can you help me again? And then, oh my God. You see, I always do the one. Not go down to the second, third, and fourth. So I think we need to create these R&D cycles and inform the policy maker. And I heard from my professor, he used to be a consultant of the Ministry of Education of Japan. He told me, Dr. Maitree, you know, in one cycle, it took 10 years. And it's only 1/3 we can revise the new curriculum. But our minister always do the new things for the future. But actually, we do not. Yeah, I think this is a very important idea. And to me, to bridge the gap, yeah, to bridge the gap between intended curriculum and implemented curriculum, we need a small development process. We have to focus on R&D on textbook, teaching materials. In Japan, they have such an organization taking care of this R&D. Also in Japan, in Korea, they has a KAIS, they have NIE. In Japan, they has an IER to do this kind of job. And for the second one, yeah, in this part, in the second one, we need to improve the teacher education and professional development. You know, in Singapore, they had NIE. In Japan, they have the teacher training center every provinces, every prefecture to do this kind of job. And they work closely with the teacher education institutes in this part. And this part is assessment. In Japan, they have the NIE to do the assessment. In Singapore, I have heard that there has SEAB, the SEPS, the organization taking care of assessment, to do assessment, to inform the policy at this level. So how the model can work in Thailand, I will elaborate how this model works during the last 15 years. Yeah. Then I'll start the 30-year Thailand projects when I got back from Japan in 2000. In fact, I got back in 1999, still back and forth for another 2 years to complete my PhD. But actually, I've started the idea in 2000. It's looked like this. I'm focused on sustainable development. So I planned this 30 years project. For the first 10 years, between 2000 and 2010, I invest a lot in human resource development. I produce those PhD in the fields of math education. So far, we have like 40 PhD students working across the country. That's the first of my 10 years. Now we strengthen this network. We work together among teachers education institute in Thailand. And hopefully when I'm retired, I will retire within 3 years. Hopefully that I can see this model can expand across the country. So if you go more into detail what I've been done since 1999, the year that I got back to Thailand, this is a step we walk through. During the first 10 years, while I'm invest in human resource development, I also lay down the context to change the way the school teachers, to change the way they teach at the classroom levels. First, we create new school culture. Usually our teacher works separately, they work lonely. We don't have a culture of working together. Our classroom is belong to each school teachers, and no one can enter our classroom because I was a school teacher. Then I have experience. My principal never come to my class. Only me. I can do anything in my class. And only rare case that the supervisor come to say something and then go. That's what the experience as a school teacher. So I have to create a new school culture to make school as a learning community. And also the most that I focused very much during the last 15 years is to create a classroom culture for the student learn to think by themselves. I, as a math teacher, I don't know exactly what the meaning of learning to think by themselves until I went to Japan. Usually when I was a teacher, I give some example to the student. I explain the new content through example. Then I see the student, now it's your turn. If the student can do, I'm very appreciate, I'm very happy. But that not mean learning to think by themselves. To think by themselves, the student don't have to have their own problem. I never noticed that. But to have the student have their own problem is very difficult as a teachers. So, and then we have to create some kind of new idea. We can say innovation for teaching and learning mathematics. Then I create new way of teaching. I call the term open approach. I will more elaborate what I mean open approach. And lesson study, the terms I borrow from Kathleen Lewis. They translate from a Japanese words, but that's only part of many aspects of classroom teaching practice in Japan. In Japan, they have many terminology. Lesson study is only one among many. Yeah. So I'm showing you some example of Japanese style of education. Yeah. How to deal with student individual differences. This is what we have to deal with as a teachers. Most countries, including Thailand, treat this issue quite negatively, seeing it as a barrier or obstacle of teaching and learning. Why Japanese style of education treats it as a cognitive resources? Oh, it's new for me. Usually, as a teacher, I say blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's an incapable student, capable student, and how I deal with those kind of students. I'm seeing negatively. But in Japan, they treat it as a cognitive resources for collaboratively problem solving in the classroom. So over in Japan, they focus on collaboratively problem solving in the classroom. And then they always learn from the live classroom. That's also the central issue of lesson study in Japan. Not just only focus on the cycle. And how the Japanese teacher invest in cognitive resource? They invest time on preparing tasks and problem situation before coming to the class. The roots of this idea, as I would just mention, because in the Japanese teacher, they think a problem cannot be given. You see, we always, as a teacher, we take for granted, right? Oh, today, as a math teacher, I have 10 problems, and then distribute to the student, and you work together. But how can we give a problem to other people? We can't do that, right? Problem cannot be given. They have to have their own problem. So instead of distributing a number of problems in the class, you see, they focus on one certain or particular task. That's the Japanese teacher usually do in the class. So they spend most of the time to prepare this one certain or particular task, rather than many separate tasks in one period. That's what we usually do, right? We collect a lot of problems and give it to our student. But Japanese teacher never do that. Most of their time, I'm repeating again, most of their time, they use for preparing one particular task for one period. And they become their professionalisms. Then most focusing on providing time for collaboratively solve the problem rather than each individual engaging in many tasks. I think this is a big difference what we do classroom teaching practice. Yeah. So sharing many aspects of one certain or particular problem in a class through whole class discussion and comparing is most important. So this is the meaning of whole class discussion and comparing. And students deeply engage in various aspects of problem, which is likely to be called for future problem solving, because they know a lot of aspects of one particular problem. I will show you an infographic of this idea. Usually we do this. One student engaging many tasks, right? It looks like this. But not deep understanding, because they spend a lot of time for many tasks. Individually, they engage in each task in one period and no time. They rush to solve problem. Oh, this can do, this cannot do. That's most of the time we use in the classroom. We do this. I also do it when I was a teacher. But the idea that I just mentioned, so in traditional classroom, it looked like this: one student, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a number of students in the class, and so busy. And teacher do not know how to handle this kind of task. It's so complicated. You see, a number of students, for example, you have like 40 students in the class, and each student deal with a different task. How you do with that? How you deal with such situation? It's so complicated. This is our job as a school teacher. And to prepare, we have to do this. I myself also did this kind of job when I was a teacher, collect many tasks from a lot of textbook, workbook, and then give it to the student. The idea behind one certain and particular problem is this certain problem had to be open to accommodate the student idea in the class. This is the point. Not just any problem, but one problem is widely open to accommodate the student idea. This is very important. So the idea is not just solving the problem. You see, usually we start from a given problem and focus on solving problem. The worst case is focus only right and wrong answer, right? That's it usually we do in the classroom. We start from given problem, solve problem, and get the answer. And focus on right and wrong answer. But in fact, right or wrong answer, it doesn't matter. But the process of solving the problem itself is very important. But more than that, in the case of Japanese teacher, they focus on the, I don't know how to say, a given problem, solve problem. If I say it is phase 2, what we need is phase 1 before this. The student have to have their own problem. So they focus on this. The problem posing. That's why a Japanese teacher focus on preparing the task. They never say the problem. They distinguish between student problem and what the teacher prepare. Teacher can only prepare tasks, never problem. But the student have to have their own problem. They distinguish between task and problem. So in order to prepare this task, they spend most of the time before coming to the class. And they form the community, a group of teachers working together, because they know preparing such a kind of task is very difficult, because the certain tasks have to accommodate the student idea. So only one teacher cannot do that kind of job. You really catch the meaning this, yeah? So it's look like this. This one task or particular problem situation. Each student engage the task and problem situation and has their own problem. Yes. And do whole class discussion, comparing idea. The idea is look like each student idea, but the idea to solve one particular problem together. So this student can learn from this student how to engage in this problem. This student can learn from these two students from this particular problem. So they learn a lot. This is quite contrast what I just showed to you. This is what we have been doing in Thailand. We adopt the idea how a group of teachers working together to prepare one certain or one particular task, or in special case, in mathematics, I prepare the open-ended problem. I use the idea of open-ended problem. It's a kind of non-routine problem. For example, how to design to support the student to understand 9+4. For example, we put 9+4 in the context that the student first to learn the addition, that the outcome is greater than 10 for the first time, for example. So how the student can understand 9+4, this string of symbol, what makes sense for the student. But usually we focus on 9+4 and then 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and get the 13 as the answer. But for doing particular problem, the task is quite different. Then in this model, I spent many years to lay down the context of how the teacher working together to develop open-ended problem. It took me like 5 years when I introduced this idea in the school. But I start with the student teacher. You see, this is the situation where, before we start the project. Need not to explain, right? The classroom environment like this. And if summarize what we teach in a traditional way, one teacher transmits a content to the student. That's what we focus. To transmit or to deliver the content. I'm looking into the history of math education in Japan. They reformed the way they teach since 1883, more than 100 years ago. And I'm very curious to know what the content of the reform. And then I found that the problem posing is the central idea for reform method of teaching. And this is a collection of the open-ended approach in this book. It published by NCTM in 1997, I'm not sure. So, according to my experience in Japan, how to transform a Japanese style of education into Thai education. A Japanese teacher has many terminology as a researcher. For example, this one, konai kenshu. If translated into English, it's like in-school training. They work together. And kyōzai kenkyu. Kyōzai kenkyu. I don't know how to translate it. It's like a student idea-based research on teaching material. I don't know, it makes sense to you. It's not just preparing a teaching materials, but have to base on the student idea. The teacher gather, a group of teacher gatherings, and then they have to anticipate the student idea in order to design a particular task. But in design a particular task, they need to design the materials. So they call, doing this kind of job is very important for them. Then in Japanese they say, kyōzai kenkyu. Kenkyu is mean research. To research or to study, to deeply study on some things. It means kenkyu. So they do kenkyu, they do research on teaching material based on the student idea. So it's really student-centered approach. And the third one is the most famous one in this world, Jugyo Kenkyu. And Kathleen Lewis coined the term lesson study. Lesson in Japanese is not only a lesson, in fact. Sometimes it means a class. Sometimes it means a curriculum. So sometimes to me it's mid-list. When we say lesson study, then the teacher all over will focus on lesson, a very small lesson. That is not our culture. It's too small in terms of research. It's a micro level. As long as we do not know our classroom, how we do research on lesson. So I never use lesson study as an English term when I introduce. Even I use the lesson study when internationally, but when I translate, I use classroom study. Because I think for Thai teachers, we need to let them know more deeply about their classroom before focus on lesson. Lesson is too small. Because Japan has a long history for doing lesson study, like 150 years. So they can focus on some particular topic and doing lesson study. If we try to do like Japanese teacher do, then we burn out. We cannot do that kind of job. Then I never use lesson study in that sense. But I use lesson study as a way to improve teaching approach. Because I introduce new teaching approach first. Then later, use lesson study as a way to improve the way we teach. And you see from this terminology, a Japanese teacher has a lot of things to do, a lot of practice to do. So they have to form community. Cannot do by one individual teacher. So it's a consequence of this idea that most of school in Japan is seen as learning community or professional learning communities or whatever. Yeah. Which is rare case in other countries, including in Thailand. We never have such a community. So when I'm start in 1999, then I'm a Japanese expert, come to observe, I'm sorry, I misspelling, observe math class in my area, in the northeast part, and then they demonstrate the classroom teaching practice since 2006. So yeah, this is the scenario. Yeah, a lot of Japanese expert teachers come to my university to demonstrate the classroom teaching practice. Yeah. Then later I developed the new teaching approach and the way to improve the teaching approach I call open approach lesson study. So taking care that my lesson study is different from the Japanese lesson study, completely different. Yeah. So I will show you what's my focus. Usually when we do, in order to support the teacher to understand the classroom, we use this didactic triangle, right? Teacher, student, and content. But now in 21st century, we usually know that we focus on process. Even we still focus on the teacher, but we focus on teaching process. For student, we focus on learning process. And for content, we focus on thinking process. This is the most difficult one for school teachers. Because thinking process is too abstract for them to catch up. When they do classroom teaching practice, then I use this idea. We focus on the student idea. Because the student idea as a window in order to access student thinking in the classroom. If we look back on the end of the 20th century, you also mentioned about active learning, right? But what does it mean, active learning in 20th century? Yeah. Active learning, when the student can do some things or able to do something, then we go, oh, okay, student active learning. That's the end of the 20th century. And what the issue left for entering the 21st century is this part to me. Not just only doing things, but the more important is the green part. Doing things and thinking about what they are doing. This is long history, what John Dewey mentioned in How We Think, 1993, I think. The reflective thinking. We're doing something and reflect on what we're doing. So we think about what they are doing. issue is not easy. Then the issue turned to the 21st century. Yeah? And we talk a lot. We coin the new term, not to use reflective thinking, but we coin new term like Frauel coined the term metacognition. Lovely, it means awareness of their own thinkings, or thinkings of their thinkings. In the fields of math education, metacognition is a driving force for problem solving. Usually, as a school teacher, we have to provide a lot of knowledge, a previous learned knowledge. And then the student can use this knowledge to solve the problem. Actually not. What drives problem solving is not just only previously learned knowledge, but a metacognition. Yeah? So what is a paradigm shift in 21st century? We move away from behavior to thinking skill. The blue one is less demand. The routine job, no more. No longer. Because, yeah, AI comes. So what we need to train our next generation is the higher order thinkings. For example, expert thinking, complex communication. We are not so familiar with this kind in the classroom. I speak on behalf of teacher because I was a teacher before. When you say higher order thinking, what do you mean that? How to do this in the classroom? You see, I show you an example. In the case of Japan, they prepare this idea 40 years. In fact, they prepared somewhere around it. 1957, they put an idea of higher order thinking in mathematics in the curriculum already. But in Thailand, our curriculum still focus on content, teaching blah, 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 blah. In mathematics, we only teaching calculation. Now calculation, this thing, smartphone can do everything. You can put 9 and plus 4 and get 13. Why we have to teach such thing in the classroom? So, what does it mean thinking skill? Okay. You see, thinking skill, it's not only the getting the answer. Not just thinking the same thing. Repeat things. Or not just only thinking. We have to do things and reflect on what we are doing. But the most difficult I would like to share with you is for students how to practice thinking skill in the classroom. I got this idea 15 years ago. Then I start my job. Yeah. Start with thinking by yourselves or thinking by themselves, if we talk on behalf of students, through solving your own problem. I particularly focus on the student own problem, not teacher problem or textbook problem. We usually teach them through our problem. I mean, through teacher problem. But we start from the student, their own problem. So, for teacher, how to teach thinking skill, not to teach a subject. This is the issue for 21st century. Be careful. I remind you as a teacher, because we are the same career. Not to teach a subject. Not to teach 9 plus 4 equals 13. Then, oh, you right. And the student, 12, oh, you wrong. No, not to teach that. You have to teach them how to make sense 9 plus 4. How students can do this. they have to decompose 1 from 4 and putting to 9 and making tens, and this is 10, 3. Oh, the how-to is decomposing and making tens, not just counting 9, 10, 11, 10, 10, 11, 13. Usually we teach that. But when they face a new situation, not 9 plus 4, 9 plus 6, then they have to call for, okay, 6, I have to make tens. Then 1 from 6, making tens with 9, and then 10, 5. Oh, I really understand. Then the student can be fluent. Oh, then I decompose like 4 from 9, making 10 with 6. Oh, you can do. Then it's also 10, 5, 10, 4, 10, 3. Then again, new situation like 19 part 4. Okay, 19 is 110. And then 9 plus 4, back to 9 plus 4. Okay, 110, 210, and 3. This what we need to teach them to make sense 9 plus 4 in order to solve the unseen or unknown problem. Because now the world is changing. We don't know what the student to meet, what kind of situation. So they only teach them how to. And they have to become aware the issue for the 21st century. Thinking skill is mean to train them to become aware by themselves, to call for the how to solve new problem. Because I run out of time already, so I cannot cover all the whole thing. I will show you some picture what I have been doing. Oh, they give me another 10 minutes. Thanks for generosity. Okay. Yeah, I will show you the idea of the new teaching approach focused on developing thinking skill. Not just delivering the content, but you have to change the classroom environment. One teacher, a number of students, this is the same. But you have to provide opportunity for your student to think by themselves. To think by themselves. Not just solve a lot of problems. No need. No need. Because solve a lot of problems, just repeating things, not necessary. But you prepare a very good one particular problem. Which is open for your student in your class. And then each student engage in that. Then you provide chance, opportunity for them to think by themselves. Then this is the new teaching approach. The ground when I develop open approach. So the teacher change the role, not delivering the content, but to investigate the student learning process. Oh, it's too abstract. Then I just show you before. The teacher investigate the student idea. Then you can touch the student personal learning. Because when you get the student idea in your class, then you provide them a chance to reasoning the idea. When you do whole class discussion. And to do this way, you develop both teacher learning and student learning. Usually in the class, we are so familiar with those who are going to learn is student. But no, in this new class, both teacher and student also learn. And sometimes teacher learn a lot from your student. And you will see this is a component of the personal learning of your student. Their interest, their wonder, their exciting. This, the classroom changed after a decade. I'm struggling in my country. Yeah. In fact, this kid, they do the diagram for decomposing this. In fact, I don't have time. I have the video, but I don't have time to show you. This kid is a special need, but they do well in mathematics like this. Only him can do in this class. The rest of students still using block and some other material because we prepare a lot of things. But this kid, yes. And the open approach, the new way of teaching mathematics, or in fact in some other subject, I also extend the idea. We do the 4 steps of open approach. First, start with posing the problem. Then the student solve their own problem, while the teacher observe and make note to getting the student idea for discussion in the 3rd step. And in the 4th step, the whole class discussion focus on the how to we learn in this class. Then is connected, incorporated with a lesson study, a 3-step of lesson study, and do it as a weekly cycle. That's what I mentioned. My lesson study is quite completely different from what the Japanese do lesson study in Japan. I'm start doing this open approach and lesson study. Like this, every week. And we support the teacher to design the particular problem using the textbook. I translate a Japanese textbook for 10 years, covering the 1st grade to 6th grade. Otherwise, it takes much time for a group of teachers to design the particular problem. Then I support them by translating this textbook, used as a supplementary when they do lesson study. And hopefully, it will solve this problem between school mathematics and university mathematics. I don't have time to go into detail the model of open approach when teaching mathematics. Yeah. I would like to end up. In fact, I plan to show this. Usually we teach this, right? 9 plus 4 equal this. But in fact, we should have to choose how students can make sense 9 plus 4. The teacher have to discuss and design the material. Then this is the class, what happened in the real classroom after designing. The classroom has been changed. Just recent class last month in our demonstration school. And I visit school in the southern part of Thailand, in Phuket, last month. Yeah. The class has been changed. Some in the northern parts of Thailand. And this is the area we expand the project school. Mostly in the northeast part of Thailand and some in the north. And we just started in the southern part 3 years ago. Now we have 150 schools among 30,000 schools. It's quite slowly, but to make sure that this will sustain. And the project also share in the APEC lesson study for 12 years. Already I have been overseeing this project and now 20 APEC member economy join this project. And just recently we have a new institute for research and development for teaching profession for ASEAN to share this kind of experience. And this, it took me 15 years to complete this cycle. We have translated the textbook, we established a teacher education institute network, and now we just started to influence the way we do assessment, a national assessment, and hopefully when we complete this cycle and inform the policy maker, then the country as a whole can be changed, and not repeat the same thing. This is our network across the country. All of them is ex-PhD student, graduate from my university, now working across the country, and we're working together. And this new institute working internationally and nationally and also regionally. And I just got back from Sweden day before yesterday. That's why I missed the two-day meeting. I'm sorry that we bid for hosting the international group for the psychology of math education. We are going to host in 2020, sharing this kind of. Please come to my university in 2020. Thanks for your attention. Terima kasih. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Maitree, for his wonderful presentation. I think briefly, Dr. Maitree highlighted the uniqueness of Japanese education, in particular mathematics teaching and learning. And he has tried his very best to make changes and reform the mathematics education in Thailand. So now I would like to open one or two questions from all of you. If you have any question, please come forward and please state your name and your question very briefly. Yes. Go first.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Professor Maitree Insprastha, for your very impressive and insightful ideas on how you share your experience to reform the mathematics education in Thailand. I was so impressed. My name is Nonliza Kushairi from Teacher Education Institution, the Aman campus. Okay, I would like to know, in your opinion, what are the factors that actually make Japanese so successful in applying and implementing the problem-posing approach in mathematics or in their life? Okay, perhaps it's because of their culture, way of thinking since decades, since birth, since in their womb they train the child, or is it because of they like to eat fish more, the lifestyle, or is it because of their historical, how they, face turbulences during wartime or whatsoever? So, what are the factors? Because if we would like to imitate one successful country in education especially, we need to learn from the experience, from the historical development, so that we can actually adopt the, the advantages, and we can actually filter all those unneedful factors. So is it because of how they design the curriculum? Because unlike ours, we have, for one subject, we have so many topics. Okay, for mathematics, for example, and maybe Japanese, they design in such a way that for one subject, they only have limited syllabus, but very deep content. What is your opinion, Prof? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll take. the first question. Thanks for the question. Yeah, the question I also asked when I was in Japan. So, how to learn from their experience and bring back to my country. Then that what I'm trying to present. That most factor is contribute to the good education in Japan, but not only the long history of their rooted culture that bring into the school culture, but I think they have a well-organized system in teacher training. I think this is a very potential or influential factor. You see, during these 20 years, I observe and visit more than, I cannot count, but I think more than 100 classrooms in Japan across the country, from Shikoku until Hokkaido. I travel across Japan, but they have the very unique and very homogeneous in the classroom. Before I go back to Thailand, then my teacher remind me, he's just kidding me, how old are you? And then I said, oh, nearly 40 at that time, because I'm studying when I was 32 already. And then I nearly 40. So you don't have much time, right? I said, yes, only like 20 years. So what do you plan? So they said, yeah, I'm thinking that I'm to get back, I'm do this. I said, no, you don't have such time. That's why I planned 30-year project. So another important factor, what we should learn as a developing country, is to sustain what we are going to do. So they plan long-term, always plan a long-term project, and make its function as the classroom level. You see, the central issue of how to improve education in Japan is in the classroom. Then he told me that, Maitree, you don't have much time, so you go straight forward to your classroom and improve and change the classroom first, then do other thing later. Then I go directly to the classroom, and in the Japanese way, the lesson study focus on live classroom. School teacher, supervisor, university professor, policy maker go to the classroom and observe the live classroom. That's the central issue of lesson study, not just a cycle. Sometimes when we imitate the lesson study from Japan, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, it doesn't matter. Only me, I use 3 steps. Kathleen Lewis used 4 steps. Some Japanese friends use 8 steps. It doesn't matter. The matter is we share our experience from the classroom, the live classroom. That I think that's what I'm trying to share with you. Yeah.
I think due to time constraint, I think I have to end this session. Okay, thank you everyone for your attentive. Okay, so over to you.